This is Tennessee Talks with United States Congressman Tim Burchett.
Hello, I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and welcome back to Tennessee Talks. And today I'm joined by Tennessee Volunteers baseball head coach Tony Vitello. Get that right, Coach?
Yes,
Vitello?
You did. Nailed
All right. Well, Burchett, nobody ever gets it right. So, anyway, Tony took the head coaching job at University of Tennessee in 2017 and started making waves almost immediately. In 2022, the Vols were ranked #1 for the first time in program history, which is pretty incredible. In my 6 years of undergraduate studies, I don't know that we ever cracked the top 20. As a matter of fact, you would always, I was a Sigma Chi, and we'd always go over to the SAE house and sit on the roof and watch the ball games.
Yeah.
So those were the good old days. But anyway, Tony has taken the Vols to 4 NCAA regionals, 3 NCAA Super Regionals, and 2 trips to Omaha for the College World Series. He's a 2-time National Coach of the Year, is known as a recruiting force nationwide. And Coach, I want to thank you for joining me today. But first of all, I just want it's exciting news about Todd Helton getting into the Hall of Fame.
Pretty phenomenal for him, and he's a tremendous family man on top of being the player he was, and just for the whole family, really happy. And I got so many texts from baseball people that said, finally, or it's about time. And so justice isn't always served, but it was served yesterday, and
Yep.
Kudos to Todd.
Sometimes justice is best served cold. I believe the Israelis say that. but he's still you know, I can remember when he played ball here, and I remember he played football at UT. It's the same. Him and Peyton overlapped just, I think, one season, and you know, hanging out with him down at Toddy's back in the day, and
Yeah.
you know, and the Helton family is a huge family here in this community. And when I was mayor, they were incredibly supportive of me, and I was supportive of them and all their endeavors. But
Nice.
Anyway, hey, tell me, what's when you look at recruiting a ball player, what's the first thing you look at?
Really, I'd say presence, which is a little bit of a vague term, but it's just kind of how they go about their business. And even if somebody is not that skilled athletically, if they've got the right presence, you may notice them. It may not be a deal where you're going to recruit them, because they do have to meet a certain criteria physically. But just how they go about their business and how they handle themselves, it says a lot about who they are. You're trying to predict the future, how you're going to interact with this person, and no one wants to interact with somebody who has poor presence.
Yeah, I call it a vibe.
Yeah, no question.
If I read the vibe, you know, in the church they talk about gifts you have, you know, and that's one of my. I don't have any gifts, obviously, sports or I mean. I'm freakishly good looking. I mean, we know that. I know that makes you feel uncomfortable, but you know, you learn how to read people and their vibe. In our business, your business and my business, it's our lifeblood, really.
Yeah, and we're never going to have 7 Todd Heltons on a team. You've got varying degrees and roles and things like that. But what you do want is you want a locker room full of guys that are fun to come to work and be around, and then of course are good teammates to one another. And so you can kind of vibe that out to a degree when you're watching these games.
Yeah, I'm on the congressional baseball team, and I was my meteoric rise from 3rd to 2nd string, 4th to 2nd string. One guy went to the outfield. Another guy pulled a hamstring, which at our age is pretty common. and somehow I got to 2nd string just by being healthy. And I'll never be 1st string. But
well, don't ever say never. We can get you over to the field and get a little workout going.
Somebody, I told the coach. I said, Coach, you better take it easy on our first baseman. He said, why's that, Birch? And I said, he gets hurt, he goes down, I'm in. He goes, you're right. I said, yeah. So, you know, I understand my role at 59. I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore. But what we do talk about was, you know, something you kind of touched on, and more so, I played high school football, but in the huddle, you know, there are guys from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different race, religion, whatever. But when you're in that huddle, or you're on the team or in the dugout, you know, you are a team, and you've got to look for that cohesive nature. And I suspect if you it's those things that you can't look at on a scorecard or something that you've got to look for.
Yeah, and when the talent is so close, you know, at a high school level, it can be when you play your rivals, or in the SEC, it definitely is. The difference could just be who's willing to lean on their teammates, the guy to the right and the left, a little bit more. it's not to the extreme of the armed forces or being at war or anything like that, but you got to trust the guys you're in the trenches with, and if you do, it makes all the difference.
Is there something that you preach to your kids about that you, that maybe more, I guess it overlaps on baseball, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with a ball and a bat? Or any advice?
I think the separation of the two. Drew Gilbert is probably our version of Todd Helton, or one of our most popular players that we've coached since we've been here. And one thing that Drew did very well was when he put on his uniform, it was almost like Clark Kent going into the phone booth. He became a different person, and or at least kind of the competitive version of who Drew is. And then away from the field, you want to talk about a guy who's great with kids, or was active with community service, or who just was a joy to be around. So not like split personalities, but we're looking for a guy that's a gentleman off the field and a warrior or a competitor that Vol fans get behind when they're on the field.
A lot like Congress, you got this little pin. It puts a bullseye on our back. I'm walking through an airport, or I'm going someplace in the community. It's those guys got to realize that there are folks that have good intentions for them, and some people that have very bad intentions for them.
Sure.
And I know you've got to pull them up close to you and say, hey, brother, you need to straighten up and fly right, or this thing's over.
Sure. No, I can only imagine. And nowadays with, good Lord, I wouldn't be sitting here with Twitter and all that stuff back in the day, but
I wouldn't either.
There's eyes everywhere, and it's certainly a big stage our guys are on, so they need to be aware of how they act, in uniform and out of uniform.
And I know ball players are superstitious. A lot of them are. You'll see them a number of times. They tap their bat or do something before they walk out on the field. Are you superstitious about anything?
I've been asked this a lot, and I'm not as routine orientated as the best players are. Maybe that's why I wasn't a great player. I think routines are great to keep you centered. I'm a little more scatterbrained. I might work late at night and then, wake up later, or vice versa. But I think when things are just off kilt from the norm, game day in particular, you like some consistency there. So I think I've been known to freak out a little bit if the music's not ready when the guys are about to stretch, or, just anything. Someone's in the dugout that isn't normally with us in the dugout on game day. You want things to be as close to the same each time out, so that if you do get to a game that is built up in being, holy cow, if we win this, we're going to Omaha, it still kind of feels like it did a game in February.
Yeah, I'm a creature of habit. I used to say, back before COVID took down the Wright's cafeteria, I'd say if somebody wanted to kill me, I had some death threats one time, and I said if somebody wanted to kill me, they'd have to poison the chicken fingers and gravy every other Friday. And they said, why every other Friday? I said, because that's when they'd serve it every other Friday, Because
Sure.
Every time I'd go in, I'd get the same thing in Ball Market down here on Western Avenue. I get, hoagie on brown, no mayonnaise. I tell Rich, I think I'll do something different. And he pulls out his pencil and just writes down hoagie on brown, no mayonnaise, mustard only, white cheese. And it's just kind of a running joke, but you get into your habits, and that's just your thing, and it throws you off. It throws me off when I go somewhere and something's out of order.
Yeah. No, I envy you, because most successful people are pretty structured, and I try and make sure our guys are. But I'm at my best when I am, but I'm only at my best every now and then. So I need to stick to those routines when we get done here.
I'm going to use that. I like that. That's a good saying. Hey, what attracted you to UT?
Just the loyalty. We made a shirt that said loyal, and then instead of T, spelling it all out, put the power T. And that kind of came into my mind when I was a younger kid. I grew up in St. Louis, kind of a city slicker. And in Missouri, you're not running across too many Tennessee fans,
right.
But you're drawn to Coach Fulmer's program. Pat Summit was here. Sure. I could go on and on, all the successes that occurred when I was younger. And you just picked up on the fact that when the Vols were doing something, the entire state was not only paying attention, but they were getting involved. And it's something I always kind of craved or wanted to be a part of. I love the group mentality. You're at a concert and everybody knows the same words. It's like that every day here, to be honest with you, and that's why I've enjoyed it so much. And
it's like a Leonard Skinner concert.
There you go. to each his own, and I'd be on board if I ever got an invite to one of those back in the day. I guess it would have to be.
Yeah, back in the day. Obviously, we're a little old now. It wears us out. Who's your biggest rival in the SEC?
It's maybe an easy way out, but it's honestly, we play 10 weekends. And no other conference does that. And there are always going to be 10 good teams. So it's whichever team we're playing that weekend, and not that they're all the same, because they're not. We have a different rivalry with everybody. Kentucky is close by, and there's a natural Kentucky-Tennessee rivalry, and we've now played them a bunch of times, so there's things that come up. Georgia's to the south of us. Everybody tries to recruit Georgia and Atlanta, so we recruit against them a bunch. And so there's a different flavor. Vol fans, anytime you beat the Gators in anything, they're ready to have a parade. So it's fun for our guys. There's a new rivalry every weekend, and each one of those games is so valuable.
Do you think, when I was in high school and football, you really didn't know the other teams, and you didn't know the people on the teams. And now with the internet, it seems like the high school kids, they don't fight as much in the parking lot at Brunswick Billiards. I guess I don't guess there's a Brunswick Billiards anymore, but parking lot's still there. But it just seems like everybody knows everybody, and it's funny. I'm not saying I was friends with these people, but this year there was a ball player, and they had their phone out, and they researched, found out who his girlfriend was. Oh yeah. And started hollering her name at him. It's just it just seems it's kind of funny, really. But it's sort of like that in politics as well. People find out your business, and then. And the kids just got to be prepared. Right.
There's no secrets anymore, and there's nowhere to hide from the information that comes out. And it's kind of weird. We just had a bunch of really good recruits on campus. The kids all know each other now, and they get invited to events. They see ourselves on social media, and then same thing. Now our guys know our opponent on Friday night, our game 1 against Florida, for instance, almost as well as we do. And what's unique about our sport is we play 3-game series. So if it is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, by Sunday, probably something has happened. Probably both teams don't like each other as much, and it can make for a really fun, competitive environment.
Well, what's it feel like punching your ticket to the College World Series?
That's hard to describe. It's not to the extent of what just happened for Todd, but I would kind of make it relative to that. As athletes, you just relish in a big moment, whether it be a big dunk or a big hit or a big score. And then, there's a lot of great things and jobs in this world, but it's hard to imagine something being better than a big win.
That point, yeah. I always equate that to on election night when you win. Yeah. And they tell you, the numbers came in, and I always I lean over to my wife and my daughter if they're close, and I say, remember this, because it doesn't get any better than this right now.
Yeah, I know, it's special. And I don't mean to speak for you, but I would think in that situation it is like an Omaha or an election Hall of Fame. It's like a big win, but times 10, and it's really something that's hard to fathom and really take in. So it's important to cherish it. And I know Aiden Hutchinson, I think is the kid's name, the Lions. They're making history this particular year, and they just won a big game, and it was really cool seeing one of their star players. He wasn't celebrating; he was just looking and watching and making sure he remembered that feeling.
I always encourage my family and my friends that are around. I say it's not always like this. There's somebody out there that's losing right now that's just going, "Oh man, it's over for us." So I'm always aware of that. If you do punch your ticket this year, what would you do different than last year? What do you think needs to improve?
Well, the first thing to answer that question in a different way is I would enjoy it more. It's so hard for people, and again, in any field, you've got to grind out hours, and you're competing and trying to get things done. And sometimes the losses get more of your focus and attention than the wins. And it's important for everybody to enjoy things like we were just talking about a second ago. But I think when we go back to Omaha, it's such a grand place. Again, it's one of those things that's hard to describe. You have to stay true to what got you there. Yeah. And there's a lot of downtime and a lot of media and a lot of fans. It's so important to kind of keep that tunnel vision that, again, probably got you there and stick true to your roots. Again,
who's your opener with this year?
We open with Texas Tech,
okay,
who arguably has been the best program in the Big 12 the last couple decades, even though you got a Texas and a TCU in there.
Yep.
And it'll be in Dallas. We'll travel well. It's a primetime game where the Texas Rangers play. So I guess we're not messing around this year. We're jumping right into it.
You like being called coach or skipper, or what do you like to be called?
You know, I don't mind. There was a game against Auburn where I took a lot of heat. You know, if you post something on Twitter, you can kind of skew it the way you want. And someone had me throwing a bat at one of their guys, which was not the case at all. But that was the first weekend. Their players kept, to be honest with you, they were kind of taunting me, and they kept referring to me as Tony. And I grew up in an era where Bob Knight, love him or hate him, the final straw for him at Indiana was when a kid said, "Hey, Knight," instead of Coach Knight.
Coach,
and,
yeah. What's your title?
Yeah. But eventually, when even 6-year-olds and everybody else are just calling you Tony, all right, I guess that was, I took offense to it against Auburn when I really shouldn't. We're in a new age and a new time, and I'm down with whatever the guys call you. If someone respects you, you'll know it, and they could call you by a proper name and be disrespectful. I'll take respect over the specific title any day of the week.
Our coach on our congressional baseball team, it's Republicans against Democrats. Republicans, a good friend of mine, his name's Roger Williams, and he played in the Braves, and you know, he brings guys in. One guy he brings in was actually on first base when Hank Aaron hit.
Oh, no way.
7-15. Yeah, and he said all he could think about was touching the base. Yeah,
sure.
He made sure he touched the base because it would have thrown it off. But you know, he brings in these guys, and but we always call him Skipper.
Yeah.
And that's what he likes. It's old school. And, you know, he brings in these guys, and they'll tell stories about the Mick, and just, you know, and they'll throw warm up with us, or they'll throw batting practice. I get up at 4:30 in the morning to get to the gym by 5 to get my ride by 5:30, and then we start practice, go 6 to 7 in the morning. And it's only 1 hour, but we start, I think, March 1st or something. The game's not till June or something. You know, we have former pro ball players that tell us, you know, we practice more than they did leading up to the, you know.
Yeah, you guys are getting after it. I mean, we're in the SEC, but I can tell you I'm sleeping at 4:30.
Yeah.
Now, Republicans versus Democrats, we got any bench clearing brawls going?
Well, 2 years ago, you can watch it on YouTube, a lady from the Democrat side, she got a little pop-up and something, and she didn't run it out, and one of our coaches said, "Hey, run it out," and she ran by us and flipped us a bird, and the guy looked at me and said, because I'm always on the bench, you know, and he goes, "Hey, Birch, did she just flip us a bird?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Don't worry, somebody got it." I mean, it was literally on ESPN, like,
really?
Right, you know, I mean, it was, and you know, and she claimed she didn't, but they slowed it down. It's pretty obvious. Pretty obvious, yeah. And it's kind of, we tend to keep our conversations in the dugout and out on the field more family oriented, and on our side, and it's just an interesting, that's a change of events, but anyway, this is a point in the show where I regret ever putting this part in, but I do it every time, and I let you ask me a question, anything you would like.
Well, I'm glad to hear you answered the brawl one, but in all seriousness, what do you think is a big key to progress? For us, we've just consistently been trying to make progress with our facility, with our recruiting efforts and the program, and I try and keep politics away from when I'm at work, but I am curious. And do you kind of see just a general answer what a key to progress is right now?
Yeah, and it's not what Washington does. You know, they don't. We haven't passed a budget in over 20 years, and that's by design. You know, the big boys, I call it the uniparty. It's Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
It's the guys you always see out on the tarmac shaking the president's hand when he comes in, whether the Republicans are in the White House or the Democrats. There's always a certain element that's there, and obviously I'm not a part of it. We've got to do better because we are actually losing our country. $34 trillion, almost $35 trillion in debt. $1 trillion, it's hard to even fathom or as the good old boys, it's hard to even phantom what that even means.
Right.
You know, so it's just, and it's that way by design. And when you don't pass a budget, you pass what's called a continued resolution. And then in a continued resolution, it just continues what I think are bad policies. But you don't have hearings, and there's no accountability, and stuff gets tucked in there every time. And the spending just increases. And the programs that you don't like still get funded, but somehow the big boys, they always have their family or their company or their association always gets taken care of, you know, and that that's why people, I think, are so disgusted with politics, and that's honestly why a lot of people don't like me, because I call that stuff out. But I'm sick of it. I just you can't run a university without a budget. Right. You can't run a church or a synagogue or a temple or whatever. You can't run a charity without a budget. But federal government continues to do that, and until we decide we're going to do something about it, until the public gets, and that's to the polls, you know, and your thing, if you don't have enough people buying tickets or contributors or you know, they'll. It's just that's not even a dirty secret anymore. I mean, you got to produce, and the pressure is incredible, and you've always got to be out. And I assume, you know, the university's always fundraising, because you've, you know, I worry, honestly, I always would worry when Dad was at UT, who would talk about programs. I mean, when Pat Summit was first started, you know, they didn't even, what was it, Title VI, I think, or whatever, that made that women would
Title IX, yeah.
Title IX, yeah, I'm sorry, Title IX. Yeah. That they would be funded the same, you know. And she didn't have enough money for basketballs even. I think the first year she coached, they paid her like $19,000 or $21,000 a year, something ridiculous. And you know, and it's just a constant drive. Yeah. For you all, and that's the unfortunate thing. I wish you could just coach and recruit. But I know that you've got to be, you know, you need a bigger stadium. You got to bring in the good ball players. You've got to have a good stadium. You got to have good, you know, you got to have a good weight room. You got to have all those things. And for you guys, it's just, I can't even imagine. And that's why I appreciate you coming in here, because the time you've spent is more than needed, and I really appreciate it. But because we got a lot of folks that watch this and love the Vols, and all the new additions. You know, it's just, you all have you all have sellout crowds on a pretty regular basis, which is pretty cool. Yeah,
they don't just sit there; they're active.
No.
So it's been fun. But no, I'm honored to be in this building. So pleasure, and I appreciate the honest answer too. I think in order to make progress, we've had to ruffle some feathers, and it sounds like you're on a mission to do that. And there's a lot of people, I'm sure, in your field that aren't willing to ruffle any feathers. Yeah,
I mean, they want to go along and status quo is success for them, but it isn't for me, and I know it's not for you. So you've got to, and I wish you continued success. And you're a class act, and people talk about the program and the success that you've made, and it's really exciting for Knoxville. You know, we've always been a football town, and now we've got a basketball team, and now we've got a baseball team. You know, and of course the Lady Vols, that speaks for themselves. But seeing baseball come on as you've done is just the success is incredible, and that's due to you and the people you surround yourself with. So I appreciate it, brother.
Well, thank you so much.
Traditional fist bump.
Heck yeah.
I started that, by the way.
Nice.
And COVID came along, and I saw Trump up there fist bumping, and people were calling, "Hey, Burchett, Trump's doing your fist bump." And I said, "Well, he's Trump. He can do whatever the heck he wants."
Yeah.
And now everybody does it.
Put it on loan.
Right on. But thank you, Coach. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today for another episode of Tennessee Talks. And I look forward to seeing y'all back at Omaha. I think that's, I mean, for lack of a better words, that's kick-ass.
Well, thank you. We'll be working for it. Thank you.
And I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and I want to thank everybody for turning into another episode of Tennessee Talks. As always, thank y'all for sending me here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tennessee Talks. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Keep up with Congressman Burchett by following Rep. Tim Burchett on Twitter and Instagram, and Congressman Tim Burchett on Facebook and YouTube.